Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Renewed Minds. I'm so pleased today to welcome Mandy Morris onto the show. She's a licensed professional counselor and the co-clinical director of the Mosiac Counselling Group and a mental health expert. So I don't know if there's just anything you want to add to that about your background and your journey generally that's brought you here, Mandy.
Yeah, thank you so much. And let me just say it's an honor to be on, and I'm really grateful to be doing this with you and helping other people. Yeah, so I've been in the mental health field for about 10 years now, been in private practice since 2014 with Mosiac Counselling Group. And yeah, it's been quite a journey to be where I'm at. And I often use a lot of my own life experiences to kind of help me be a better therapist. I've been through my own experience of being in a 7-year narcissistic abusive marriage, and have healed and found my way out of that. So that's definitely something that I really specialize and help people in as well. So I'm also an EMDR certified clinician, which is a trauma-based treatment. So I have a lot of people from various types of traumas, including things like narcissistic abuse, who come for treatment for that as well. And yeah, so I'm just really excited to be on.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much, Mandy. And like I said, it's such a pleasure to have people like you on, also to, be able to like impart knowledge on people and how they can also like heal and take them through the journey to know that there is hope and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, so appreciate you coming on. So yeah, today's episode that we're going to be talking about is basically to focus on the types of narcissistic abuse, because I believe there's so many. I'm sure you agree, but to just focus on like a couple of themes, such as like exposure, insidious, direct, and emotional starvation, which I think are common themes. So I'd just like to start with like exposure. How would you kind of define exposure kind of narcissistic abuse, Monday, in terms of people that might be going through even a narcissistic relationship and might not even be aware at this stage?
Right. Yeah. So kind of an overview of like the hallmark traits of what all narcissists have.
Yeah.
Is this, grandiose sense of self or inflated sense of self. They lack empathy.
Yeah.
They they have grandiose ideas about their importance. They need a lot of admiration.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah, the need to maintain a certain image is very important to them.
Yeah.
And at the core of it, narcissists are really pathologically insecure. And so they have to, because of that, they've built this sort of arena of deception about who they really are. So you'll find that they might exaggerate their accomplishments, or stretch the truth about how good they are at something, or things like that. And narcissists can be hard to spot early on because they are also very charming. They're very typically very intelligent people, so they know how to say the socially appropriate things, whether they actually feel them or not. And so it can be hard to spot. But in terms of exposure, this kind of goes along the lines of what a classic narcissist does. And there's, like you said, there's all different types of narcissists. When you are experiencing exposure, you are the one who gets a front row seat at them putting on the show of their importance. So what I mean by that is, like, this could look like that you're going to a restaurant and they have to make it known that they need the VIP table, that right, like, I want the special menu, or who's your cook and what kind of awards does he have, and like things like this, where it's embarrassing to the person who's in it, and they seem very arrogant. And so people might brush it off as arrogance at
Yeah, just
first.
arrogance is just
Yeah, yeah, like, man, they're really into themselves, or I can't believe they treated that person that way. That's so arrogant, you know? And so that's what exposure is. And this is you know, more of a milder form of abuse, because you still have an out when you experience this. You have a choice to, you know, at that point, decide if you want to leave, if you don't want to go to dinners with them anymore, you know, things like that. There's still a choice involved, but the exposure part of it is that front row seat to seeing their arrogance,
yeah.
that doesn't go away.
But don't you think, like you said, like they can have a choice? But I mean, sometimes I just presume, what about like people that are in situations where they're sharing children with, you know,
Right,
the abuser? I mean, how do they even navigate, you know,
right.
a situation like that? It's more,
Yeah.
it becomes more difficult. Yeah,
Yeah. So, and as we get into other types, it does get more difficult because it
yeah,
becomes even more and more abusive. But for just the exposure one, like, you could have a choice to say, like, let's say, you know, anytime you go anywhere with that person, they are puffing themselves up, they're making a scene, they're they're trying to show their importance to the world, and you have a choice. You can say, you can be arrogant, but you can't with me, so I'm not going to come on these trips with you, or
yeah,
I'm not going to go
yeah.
out in public with you anymore if you continue to act like this,
Sure, sure. And
you know.
go on, what were you going to say?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, and in terms of the example you used with the restaurant, I can even relate to that in some similar contexts
Mhm.
from my previous experiences. And for me, it was kind of like a bit of, you feel that embarrassment. And because
Mhm.
obviously I didn't have that knowledge back then. And
Right,
it's
right,
like in between, like, well, they're my partner, shouldn't I be sticking up for them? But at the same
right,
time, you like a bit embarrassed, like, okay, is they taken this a bit too far? Are they being a
right.
bit too like demanding and entitled? Because
Yep.
there'll be situations where I just think, well, like, just relax, like there's no big
Yeah.
deal. Like, what's the big deal?
Right.
You know? And
Mhm.
yeah, I think that was definitely a kind of like exposure experience in
Yep,
relation to
absolutely.
what you were saying. It's definitely relatable with that. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And in terms of like the other types of abuses, like direct, I
Mhm.
believe that's probably like, you know, direct physical abuses that you would just be getting, you know, from the abuser. I don't know if you
Mhm.
can elaborate into more detail with that in terms of direct abuse.
Yeah, direct narcissistic abuse is pretty much how it sounds.
Yeah.
It's, and it often can turn into physicals. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it
Okay.
does, but this is where they are saying, like, belittling things for you, at you, yelling, screaming, name calling. I know my ex used to tell me all the time, "You're such a terrible wife," like,
Mm.
and say just these harsh,
Oh,
mean things,
wow.
and it's directed at you, right? It's also directed at other people, but it's directed at you. And oftentimes this can turn into more physical as it escalates and as there aren't boundaries put into place. You
Yeah.
know, a lot of times when you're the recipient of this direct narcissistic abuse, that verbal and emotional abuse,
Yeah.
you're often left to believe that maybe you had done something wrong, or it was your fault, and therefore it, you know, you almost can, it can become easy to rationalize in your mind that, well, maybe you deserved that type of thing.
Mm. Yeah.
But no matter what you've done or haven't done, no one deserves
No
to
one
be
deserves it. Yeah. No one
talked
deserves
to
it.
that way.
Yeah.
And that's a way for the narcissist to assert their power and control over you by trying to make you small.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Belittling.
and so that's, you know, in a nutshell, that's what that direct narcissistic abuse is.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think like, you know, from even experiences that I can relate and when I've talked to friends about, it's like when you're that kind of situation and you trying to like set up boundaries in terms of abuse.
Right.
Well, I'm not abusing you, so why should I take abuse from you? That's not my
Right.
standard. And it's
Exactly.
like a constant cycle. Like
Yeah.
how would you, okay, if someone's in a situation like that, I mean, for our viewers, and they're constantly getting abuse
Hmm.
you know, the individual, and they're trying to like, you know, warn them and set up boundaries, how would you say they should go about that in terms of setting up appropriate boundaries for it to stop repeating itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's important that you go ahead and establish what kind of way you're willing to allow yourself to have
Yeah.
conversation with the narcissist. So like, I will only talk to them if they're calm. They don't
Okay.
use
Okay.
a name. There's no name calling, no belittling, no harsh words. And if any of those things start up, then I am at that point, I feel uncomfortable. I don't feel safe. Therefore, I will not engage in the conversation. I will leave the room. I will go in my car and go on a drive. I will go stay at a friend's house if I need to. I will take the kids and we're going to go to the park, you know,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. And the thing is with narcissists, because they lack empathy, trying to reason with them, trying to have a rational conversation about your feelings is like talking to a brick wall. They don't they don't get it
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
lack empathy.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it's a matter of, I need you to know what my boundaries are so that if this happens, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And time after time, if you can be consistent and sticking to your boundaries and not engaging, and you keeping calm, you know, this is like, you know, the reminding yourself that this is them, not you. So,
Yeah.
and the more you can be consistent, the more you're essentially training the narcissist that, hey, if you want to have a conversation with me,
Yeah.
you have to play by my rules.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm not playing in the sandbox with you.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the strategies that I, especially with the verbal and emotional stuff that I've used for myself in the past and that I teach to my clients is, as weird as it may sound, imagining that there's a bubble around you, okay? And inside this bubble is all of your truth,
Yeah.
all of your experience, all of your feelings and you know, and wisdom.
Yeah.
And on the outside of the bubble is the narcissist. And anytime they start in their narcissistic ways, you just imagine that their thoughts, feelings, and words go splat on the outside of it.
Oh wow.
Okay, so
Okay.
you
Yeah.
don't take on their energy, and you're
Yeah.
able to like detach, mentally and emotionally detach. It's like you're viewing it from a distance, from outside the bubble.
Yeah.
And at that point you can decide what you want to do with that. It's okay. I remember one time, you know, sometimes there would just be so much negativity floating in the air because maybe he was ranting about, you know, some terrible thing that someone else did and he couldn't believe it, or, you know, his bad deal in the world. And I would just imagine this bubble and be like, okay, in my head, not out loud, I'd say like, this is the narcissist talking. I don't have to let his mood become my mood.
Yeah.
And so I just began to learn the skill of detachment.
Yeah.
By using that strategy until I was able to just kind of do it on my own without having to visualize it. So that can be a little helpful tip as well for people.
I think that's very useful. I'm glad you used that example because it's very easy, and I can talk from experience as well. After discovering, it's very easy to, because at the end of the day, they want to feed off your energy, whether that's positive or negative. They feed off that supply. And if you can like mentally prepare yourself to not engage in that with that supply, I think that's fantastic. I think it can be a way for people to, you know, be able to control their emotions around the narcissist, and also like,
yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up because yes, there's what's called the narcissistic supply, the narc supply. And essentially they get fed, their ego gets fed, their higher sense or grandiose sense of self gets fed through attention. Like the example, you know, of at the restaurant, that was negative attention, but that was still attention.
It was still attention.
You know, and so whether it's, you know, positive attention or negative attention, they need that supply to feel good about themselves. So the more you cannot engage, you know, the more you can, I even tell people, have your responses to the narcissist sound very indifferent.
Like no
like almost like you're bored with them. You know, like I'll even train kids how to do this when they have a narcissistic parent on just being like, okay, or didn't think about that. just kind of whatever, you know, just very, very indifferent.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard this one. Oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. And just
Yeah. Yeah. But have your tone be very indifferent. And usually what you'll find is you'll be taken aback at first.
Yeah.
They'll try a little harder, but if you can be consistent with that, then they just get bored with you and they go to the next one. Like, you know, and so that's also a really good strategy to have.
That's really profound knowledge, and I'm glad you shared that. And I mean, like, but don't you think, like, even if for someone that's actually currently in it, don't you think the cycle will just keep repeating itself and repeating itself? Obviously, we're not going to advise anyone to, like, oh, break off with it. I mean, what would you say is the final advice on that part? If they're finding it's just constantly repeating. Yeah.
Well, I think it's recognizing what is your part of the negative cycle.
Yeah.
Because you can't control their part of it. All you can control is yours. So I know, like, for me, I'll speak from my personal experience. Yeah. My part of the negative cycle for so long was trying to convince him to change his mind about whatever it was. Yeah. Or it was not speaking up and allowing things to happen, not setting boundaries. Those became part of my part in allowing it to happen, because especially with the not setting boundaries or not saying how I really felt, for me, in my own dysfunction of it, I felt very much like, okay, if I assert myself and speak up more, what will he do? You know, it felt very unsafe. I didn't realize that I could just leave. I could go stay at a friend's for a couple of days. The thought of that, was very debilitating, because I was very trapped in fear of the narcissist, right?
Yeah. And
so the more I grew in strength for myself and I got help for myself and my confidence grew, the more I was able to see things for how they really were. Exactly. So I got support, so I got support. I felt like I had a team behind me now. And now I could, I didn't feel alone in trying to protect myself, right? For whatever that was. So I think a big first step is recognizing what is the cycle, what is your part in it, and then how do I get support?
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's so fantastic. I'm glad you outlined that for our viewers as well. And that likes to lead me on to the insidious kind of abuse, which I think it's a major one, especially
it's like the worst. Yeah,
especially with the coverts. And I mean, I think we can term that as gaslighting, manipulation, things like that. But I would like your perspective on that.
Yeah, the insidious abuse is, it is all those things. It's the manipulation, it's the gaslighting. For those of you who don't know what gaslighting is, it's when the person twists things around in such a way that it makes you question your own reality, makes you think and feel like you're the crazy one. They will distort maybe facts, so that things that you thought were facts into now you questioning yourself. And it's a manipulative tactic, and they do it intentionally. And that's the thing, is that, like, some people start to, like, maybe feel bad, or maybe because you're trying to, when this is with someone you love, you want to assume the best in them. And so it's hard. But you have to listen to your gut. And this is, especially for the insidious narcissist, they're really good at charming because they're manipulative. And so they use their charm, and they find ways to find out what your weaknesses and vulnerabilities are, and then we'll use that against you. Okay. So, like, an example for me from my experience is, it took me a really long time to heal after I got out of the relationship from the trauma of all of this. I was left believing that I'm not lovable, and that I wasn't good enough, because I was always told I wasn't a good enough wife. And I felt like I couldn't trust my judgment, because how did I not see all these things? But the reality is, after I did years of work around this, as a therapist, but the reality is that he used my sensitivity and my empathy against me. So it was very, very manipulative in that way. And so that sort of abuse affects you just as much psychologically as if you were being beat up. You were having physical abuse happen to you.
I'm telling you, and I like that's one of the things I like that you say that, you know, mental health is just as important as physical health.
Yeah.
I believe that so much, and I think especially in parts of Africa as well, there's kind of like, you know, not so much an awareness of how important mental health is, and you know, I think it's so important that people realize that words are so like important, and if you keep taking on negative words into your mind, your spirit is going to eventually saturate into you, and you know, I'm sure you engage in some similar things like that, and just positive stuff, affirmations, just taking them in, and you know, just filling yourself with positive self and not taking on negative words from people. I think that's so important.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's another way to use the bubble technique. You'll also find with these individuals that they will use threats as manipulation. So in my situation, if I left, then you would. So his types of indirect words would be things like, if you leave me or if you tell anyone, then you don't want to know what's going to happen. You don't want to know what I could do to myself, because he would make statements that were indirect about being suicidal. And so it would always leave me with this fear of, if I left, he would kill himself. Or in my situation, I did not have kids. But I had a dog, which I know it's just a dog, but he was my only buddy at the time. I was so isolated from everybody. Like I would cry with him. We would go on walks if it was a bad night. And when I finally did leave for the first time, he would say that, you know, he can't take care of the dog. So if I don't come home, then he's just gonna have to put him down. And like things like that, to try to manipulate me to come back home. And I know a lot of clients that I have, kids are used to manipulate, to threaten and things like that. And in a lot of these cases, the manipulation is a very loud bark. They typically don't, you know, the bark's louder than their bite type of thing. They typically don't always follow through, but you also don't want to ever take that risk. But at the same time, like you can't stay trapped to these emotional hostage situations as well. So that's where this abuse is really, really debilitating, because there's the fear of, if I go, or if I, you know, take a break, or if I put a boundary in place, then something even worse is going to happen. And so with that, that's why it's good to get some support in your life, so that you can make safe steps to do what you need to do to protect yourself and your family, to get out of those situations.
Definitely. I definitely agree with you in that. I think even for the insidious, I don't know if this is relatable for you, but I think one that might be quite common for people is, especially if there's a situation whereby, you know, I think I did an episode on narcissistic cheating per se. I mean, anyone cheat at the end of the day, but why does narcissist cheat? And if you're in situations where the person is trying to justify, well, this is why I cheated. We all know cheating is wrong. So like that's, even that in itself is a bit of manipulation, like not taking accountability.
It's because you were a bad partner. That's why I cheated.
Exactly. Like that's totally not, that is direct insidious. So I think that's important for people to know. I don't know, is that, if you had any experiences like that you can relate to at all?
A lot of my clients can definitely relate to that. That's happened to them, and I really have to help them separate out that cheating is a choice, and not everybody who has a dysfunctional relationship cheats, and that's a separate issue from whatever the person is saying that was wrong with the relationship. And so don't buy into that. Don't buy into that there's no excuse for someone choosing such a traumatic betrayal behavior, and that you have to protect yourself from those words, and then think about, well, what do you want to do because of this? Because this has happened. But yeah, that's it's never your fault for someone else to cheat. They chose that.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. Thank you so much for that, Mandy. And I think the final one that I'd like to look at is emotional starvation.
Yeah.
Now, I believe this one can be extremely like painful for, the victim. So yeah, I don't know where you want to start off with that.
Yeah. So keeping in mind the overall hallmarks of a narcissist, that lack of empathy is one of them. And that gets developed in the brain for a narcissist for lots of different reasons, that I won't go into all of those, but it literally is that they don't have a certain part in the brain that functions where we have our empathy in that part of the brain. Like it's truly like a neurological disability. And I want people to really view it in that way, because they don't have the capacity to have these interrelational skills. So personality disorders, narcissistic personality disorder is a disordered way of relating to others because of how they view themselves. And so oftentimes narcissists you will rarely find a narcissist in therapy. They don't think they have a problem. Okay. So they aren't able to see their ways, so to speak. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so know that. So with that being said, emotional starvation is when they just don't get how you feel and they don't even consider it. It's like let's say I what's a good example here? So let's say that I was like, hey, I really didn't like the fact that, you didn't come on a walk with me and it really hurt my feelings. They might say something back like, I had things to do. Like, it's just very matter of fact. Or they might say things like, I don't like to walk. Like, and so like, that's just like a benign example, but they literally, like, I would have liked to have heard, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I was super busy, blah, blah, blah. But no, it's just like matter of fact, your emotion. And they don't even take into account your emotions. And it's so painful. It's so hurtful because relationships are emotional.
Definitely.
And so it's like you are getting starved of the emotional nutrients that you need in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because of
like the way you put
that. Because of their inability. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And the thing is, it's like when sometimes when the emotional starvation is happening, from experience as well, if there was something I read up about the science of apology, and that's another aspect where they find it hard to apologize even in the first instance. And sometimes I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. If a partner apologizes to you and you can't feel the apology, well, there's usually a reason for that, because it's not heartfelt apology, and there is a science to apology. I mean, I don't remember the detailed steps, but it's just acknowledging it and knowing that you won't do that again. So, I mean, how would you say people can be, try to identify, when it's either real or a fake apology? In regards to that.
I think when you feel like when you start to notice that they don't reciprocate any empathy towards your feelings, when your feelings aren't put into consideration, and I think noticing if they have trouble apologizing or don't apologize. A lot of times the narcissist will even use apologies as kind of a weapon to still guilt trip you, so they might say something like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but you do know if you hadn't done blah, 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 like, and so it's just very cold. Yeah.
There's always like a but after the apology.
Yeah.
When that just erodes everything you just said first instance. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Well, now, and a lot of people in general have a bad habit of that anyway, doesn't make them a narcissist.
I know.
So, so, I think though that just this pattern, if you're noticing a pattern of these things, that is something to,
be aware of.
Red flag is up. Yeah.
happening over and over. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Mandy. And I mean, in addition, is there anything you want to like add in terms of like helping people, you know, heal from this and, you know, this after recognizing this types of narcissistic abuse?
Yeah, I think recognizing the severity of it, I think especially when it's not a physical one, it can be easy to, um, you know, allow things to happen. Narcissists usually tend to gravitate towards more very empathic people. They tend to gravitate towards more people pleasers. So I am all of those things. I always say I'm a people pleaser in recovery. Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, I think, and for people like that, we always empathize with the other person. And so I think it's important to recognize that you have to put your feelings first in these sorts of relationships.
Definitely.
You have to, absolutely have to. And it's not selfish at all. It's a part of what you have to do to keep yourself well. That staying in these sorts of abusive relationships will wear you down mentally and physically. They do create trauma, and that getting support and getting help, even, I mean, the first person I opened up to was one of my best friends. And from there, I opened up to more people, you know, and then I got more clarity around the situation. Then I got more empowered, you know, so just, it's those small steps.
Yeah,
that there's just one person.
Definitely.
Yeah, that make the biggest, you know, that are the biggest deal. And that this is not your fault. There's nothing that you could do or could not do to be deserving of this. And recognizing that is important, you know. And I'll often use this as, okay, if this was your kid in this type of relationship, what would you tell them to do? You know, put it in perspective. You would not want, you know, your child to be in this, or your best friend to be in this. And so what is it for you? And I know it's so much more complicated than that, especially when there's kids involved and when there's, you know, just complicated situations. At the end of the day, though, what's going to matter 10 years from now? And that's that you have your health. And so, yep, just even opening up to that one person's important.
Yeah, and I think I like the fact that you said that. I mean, because to me, we can say this, but it is easier said than done. There does have to be effort put into it, especially if you're an empath. I like the point that you made that you need to think about yourself. But as empaths, our natural nature is to think about others and others' feelings.
Right.
So it is important, I believe, for people to, and I'm sure, like, you know, on your kind of like training courses or something, there would be guidance on that. On that point, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add in terms of any programs you're doing at the moment.
I actually am just, absolutely. I'm actually launching a 90-day, so it's a 3-month program where you get essentially unlimited coaching and therapy from me and resources. Essentially, it's what I wish I had when I was going through this. And it's for, it's called Fast Forward to Freedom. And it's for people who are breaking out or trying to heal from toxic relationships. And so anyone out there who is interested in that, please send me a message. You can DM me on my Instagram, which is therapist_Mandy. I'm also on LinkedIn. You'll see me as Mandy Morris LPC on that one. And send me a message. If you're interested in that program and you need help navigating this, we can set up a call and see if you're a good fit. But I've spent a lot of time developing this, and it's what I wish I would have wanted. And there's whatever it ends up looking like by the end of the 3 months, you're going to be a completely different person in all of the good ways, and have a lot of healing in the process.
Yeah, and I really do appreciate your work, Mandy. I really do appreciate what you're doing. And what I'll also do is I'll put a link to on the comments to all these programs that are going on as well, because that's what this is about. It's about a healing hub, for people to find discovery, education on these types of abuse, and also healing from the abuse as well. So I just want to thank you so much, Mandy, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on and sharing.
Oh, this was wonderful. And before we sign off, people can also go to mandythetherapist.com, and it also has the info on there as well.
Okay, that's fantastic. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome.
Thank you so much for having me on.
It's been a pleasure having you, Mandy, and hopefully in future we can welcome you on for some future episodes.
Anytime.
Yeah, I'll appreciate
Anytime.
that. Thanks so much, Mandy. Hi guys, so I hope we enjoyed that episode of Mandy Morris. Hope we received a lot of value, and obviously with her profession, if anyone's struggling at home, suffering in silence, I can put a link to her website, on her programs that you can benefit from as well. So stay tuned for more future episodes. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Please share as well to spread awareness, because there might be people that don't know about this and might be suffering in silence. Thank you for watching, and peace out.